Hey guys, tonight we're taking a little time machine trip to an era so wild, so wonderfully unhinged, that even your uncle's stories from the 70s seem tame by comparison. That's right. You're about to spend the night living the brutal life of a Quaalude addict in 1970s New York, a place and time where disco was king, crime was casual, and pharmaceuticals were available in quantities that would stun a modern pharmacist. But hey, before you fully melt into the shag carpet of your mind, here's a gentle nudge. This is a brand new channel, so if you're enjoying the ride so far, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps. And drop a comment too, let me know what time it is for you right now. I'm genuinely curious how many of us are wide awake at weird hours, quietly learning about America's most famous nap pill. No pressure, though. I'm not trying to become the guy who haunts your notifications like a desperate club promoter. Just, if you like this, show some love. Okay, now's the time to dim those lights, click on a fan for that sweet white noise, flop down somewhere soft, preferably not covered in suspicious stains, and get ready. So let's get curious for a second. Have you ever wondered how anyone survived a decade powered by polyester, canned cheese, and enough sedatives to tranquilize a zoo? What was it like to chase the American dream while being gently tackled by the pharmaceutical industry? How did anyone function in a world where the doctor's idea of self-care was prescribing you something called Lemon 714 and hoping you didn't fall asleep in a fountain? What did dating look like when everyone was just a little too relaxed to remember names, and the only safe bet was that your roommate might actually be a cop? Could you keep a job, find a sandwich, or just walk down 40 Town Street without being offered 3 different controlled substances and a ticket to a Bee Gees concert? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in the heart of Manhattan, 1976. You are technically alive, debatably functional, and your wallet contains 1 subway token, a matchbook from Studio 54, and a prescription slip written entirely in illegible doctor scrawl. Good luck. You open your eyes, immediately assaulted by the aroma of old pizza, stale cigarette smoke, and something that might once have been incense, but now just smells like regret. Your bed is a thrift store futon. The walls are brown. You're not sure if it's intentional. The light in your room is a sickly shade of orange, filtered through faded curtains that probably haven't been washed since Nixon resigned. It's not sunlight so much as a polite suggestion of mourning, like the city itself is too hungover to commit. The radiator under your window clanks in protest, as if even it knows it's being asked to do too much for too little pay. Everything in the apartment feels sticky, either from last night's spilled rum and cokes, or just because humidity is what happens when you have to hang dry your clothes in a 200-square-foot space with no cross breeze. Your alarm clock, a battered plastic cube rescued from someone else's curb, is blinking 12 o'clock in a way that's less informative and more existential. You don't remember the last time it worked. The true alarm is the upstairs neighbor's tap shoes. Yes, tap shoes. At 7:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. You contemplate revenge, but honestly, you just don't have the energy. Maybe tomorrow. You attempt to stand, but your foot gets tangled in a polyester blanket, the kind that generates enough static electricity to light up Queens. Everything is brown, orange, or beige, as if the interior decorator was legally obligated to use only earth tones and distressed finishes. You trip over a pile of magazines, mostly Rolling Stone, a stack of records, and a mysterious sticky patch of carpet that might just be a glue trap, but could also be last week's Chinese food. You're afraid to look too closely. Your first steps are cautious, partly because the floor slopes slightly, thanks pre-war construction, and partly because there's always a chance you'll step on something alive. A cockroach scurries under the heater. You salute him. He's the only one paying rent on time. The kitchen is visible from your bed. Open concept, they call it. In reality, it's just that the wall never got finished. There's a mini fridge that hums louder than the subway, a 2-burner stove with only one working coil, and a sink full of mugs that double as ashtrays. The only thing in the pantry is a box of saltines, a jar of instant coffee, and a half-eaten sleeve of Oreos you've been rationing for emergencies, like, say, breakfast. You find an apple in the fridge. It's been there since last weekend, but it's wearing so much fuzz it looks like it's prepping for a Brooklyn winter. You pour yourself a cup of water, except the faucet has 2 settings, lukewarm and brown. You opt for the brown. It's got character. The sound of the city outside is both a comfort and a warning. Sirens, car horns, someone yelling about a dog that's apparently smarter than his cousin. That's New York, baby. You squint at your reflection in the bathroom mirror. A funhouse rectangle cracked at the corners, fogged over with a permanent haze from 10,000 cigarettes. Your hair is doing something it could only get away with in 1976, and your teeth have that special Quaalude glow. You make a mental note to brush them. Later, you attempt a shower. The hot water lasts exactly 4 minutes, and the water pressure is less jet stream and more gentle encouragement. There's a bar of soap that's been whittled down to the size of a postage stamp, and a shampoo bottle that claims to be all natural, but mostly just smells like regret and limes. You get dressed. Your options are wrinkled, very wrinkled, and so vintage it might actually be worth something at a thrift shop in 2025. You pull on a pair of bell-bottoms, a polyester shirt, and try to ignore the mysterious stain near the collar. It's either coffee or blood, and honestly, does it even matter at this point? Your first real decision of the day. Do you make the bed, or just throw the blanket back over everything and pretend you tried? You opt for the latter. There's something almost noble about preserving the chaos. Besides, you'll be back soon enough. As you finally step out into the hallway, keys in hand, you realize you've already survived the hardest part of your day, waking up in a 1970s New York apartment, where every morning feels like a new roll of the dice. The city awaits, unpredictable as ever, but inside your little brown and orange universe, you've already earned your first badge of survival. The morning begins with a gourmet meal of instant coffee, a cigarette, and half a Quaalude you found under your pillow. Protein? Never heard of her. The only vitamins you're getting come from the orange slice in last night's gin and tonic. Let's set the scene. You shuffle into the kitchen, if you can call 2 cabinets, a sticky counter, and a fridge that sounds like a dying lawnmower, a kitchen. The linoleum is peeling at the corners, revealing decades of mysterious stains that might be historic. The only clean mug in the apartment is, of course, being used as a makeshift vase for a single, very droopy carnation you got from a street vendor 2 weeks ago. You drink your coffee out of a glass once used for mouthwash, and honestly, at this point, your standards are more flexible than your rent payment plan. You open the fridge and take stock. A carton of milk that is now officially a science experiment. 2 limp celery stalks. A bottle of Heinz ketchup. And something in tinfoil that's achieved the rare status of sentient. Eggs? Sorry, wrong era, or at least wrong tax bracket. You contemplate making toast, but the bread has gone so stale that you could probably use it as a doorstop. Instead, you nibble on a saltine, which dissolves on your tongue with all the enthusiasm of a packing peanut. The ritual is familiar. Scoop some instant coffee into your mug, mouthwash glass still. Add hot water that's almost certainly full of heavy metals, and stir with whatever's closest. Spoon, fork, the handle of your toothbrush. The result is less morning pick-me-up and more tolerable brown liquid. Sugar? Out of the question. Cream? The last time you had cream in your coffee, disco was still considered subversive. You light a cigarette because, frankly, everyone does. The doctor says it's bad for you, but he's the same one prescribing Quaaludes like they're breath mints, so his authority is questionable. The first drag tastes like hope and disappointment, which is pretty much the flavor of the entire decade. You stare out the window at the city, marveling at how Manhattan mornings somehow manage to smell like both exhaust and fried onions, no matter where you live. If you're lucky, your roommate stumbles in around now, bleary-eyed and wrapped in a towel. He eyes the coffee, the cigarette, and the half-pill you're holding, and raises an eyebrow. This is code for, "Did you save me any?" You break the saltine in half and toss him the smaller piece. Breakfast is a communal affair, if not exactly a nutritious one. You might get bold and try fruit. There's an apple in the fruit bowl, reed, empty ashtray. But its surface is dimpled and soft, like it's lived through 3 different presidential administrations. You take a bite anyway. It's more of a suggestion of apple than a real fruit, and your teeth immediately regret the decision. You consider scrounging some loose change for a bodega run, but that requires pants, shoes, and the will to live, none of which are currently in your inventory. Across America, people are eating eggs Benedict and pancakes. Here, breakfast is whatever you can stomach and whatever your stomach won't immediately file a complaint about. Sometimes it's leftover Chinese takeout, cold from the fridge and eaten with your fingers because all the chopsticks are wedged between the couch cushions. Sometimes it's just black coffee and hope. If you're feeling fancy, you might add a splash of vodka and call it continental. You glance at the time, realizing you're late for something, probably work, possibly a meeting, maybe just being alive on schedule. The Quaalude begins its slow, friendly crawl through your system, taking the edges off your anxiety and, unfortunately, also your motivation to accomplish literally anything. You wonder how your parents did it. Breakfast, ambition, punctuality, but remember they didn't have to navigate a world where the most important meal of the day is whatever you can find under your bed or inside a wrinkled paper bag from the night before. Finally, you stub out the cigarette, finish the last lukewarm sip of coffee, and try to summon the energy to face the city. Breakfast might not be fueling you, but at least it hasn't finished you off yet. That's victory enough for a malfunctioning champion in 1970s New York. Your nightstand is an accidental pharmacy. Bottles of lemon 714 rattle cheerfully next to expired Tylenol, a bottle of whiskey, and a single mysterious button. You consider which cocktail of pills to sample, like a sommelier with a self-destructive streak. Welcome to the world of 1970s self-medication, where the official food pyramid included amphetamines for breakfast and a sedative for dessert. There is no medicine cabinet in your bathroom, just a tangled heap of tubes and empty boxes. The real action happens right by your pillow, within easy reach at all times. You lie in bed and stare at your private stockpile, Quaaludes, Valium, Darvon, and a Tibio bottle of something called Mother's Little Helper with a faded label and a suspiciously sticky cap. It's like a pharmacist's nightmare and a disco dancer's dream, all crammed onto one Formica nightstand. Each morning is a roll of the dice. Do you start the day mellow with a lude, or try to shock your system awake with something pink, round, and possibly left over from your grandmother's dental surgery? The lemon 714s wink at you from their plastic bottle. These are the currency of the city's nightlife, equal parts sedative and social ticket. Quaaludes are so common, you could probably pay your electric bill with a handful if Con Ed accepted party favors. On your street, everyone has a system. Some people arrange their pills by color, others by potential for disaster. You arrange yours by how likely they are to make you forget today's job interview. Your roommate has a different approach. He just shakes the bottle and swallows whatever comes out. He claims it builds character. He has not spelled character correctly since 1974. Pill bottles pile up in every corner of the apartment. Some have child-proof caps, no match for the average adult with a pair of pliers and a desperate need to take the edge off. Labels are half-peeled, stained by condensation from the whiskey glass that never seems to leave a coaster. One bottle is actually filled with M&Ms. You found out the hard way when you chased a Quaalude with what you thought was Tylenol and ended up with a mouthful of chocolate and self-doubt. Quaaludes themselves are an entire economy, a form of soft currency circulating from downtown loft parties to the carpeted back rooms of record shops. There's always someone who knows a guy, always a friend who can get you a deal. No prescription, no problem. Someone's cousin is a dental hygienist and writes scripts on the side for the price of a hot dog and a cab ride home. Pharmacies in the 70s are only slightly more secure than a piñata at a 5-year-old's birthday party. You walk in with a crumpled slip, mumble something about anxiety, and walk out with a bag heavy enough to knock out a professional wrestler. You tell yourself you're just using what the doctor prescribed, but the doctors here hand out scripts like Halloween candy, general anxiety, Quaalude, can't sleep, Quaalude, trouble remembering your own name. Maybe try half a Quaalude and see if it comes back to you. The only real medical advice you hear is don't mix with alcohol, which is roughly as effective as telling a goldfish not to swim. You know you should organize your stash, maybe throw away the pills that expired before Watergate, but there's a sort of pride in having a personal apothecary. Friends come over and immediately scan your nightstand for something to take the edge off. You share freely. This is a barter economy, after all. A couple of pills for a record album, a handful of Valium in exchange for a grilled cheese, a bottle of cough syrup swapped for the promise of never telling your ex where you moved. You try not to think about consequences. The pamphlet that came with your prescription is long gone, possibly used as a napkin. Side effects? If you can pronounce it, you've already taken it. When you hear sirens in the distance, you tell yourself they're for someone else. You count out your pills, pour yourself a shot of whiskey, and tell yourself tomorrow you'll start fresh. Or at least with a fresh prescription. Because in 1970s New York, as long as the bottles keep rattling and the city keeps buzzing, you're rich in all the ways that count. Except, of course, for actual money, sanity, or a functional liver. But hey, at least you've got options. You tiptoe past your roommate who is asleep, again, in the bathtub, and pray the landlord hasn't locked you out for accidentally paying your rent in Monopoly money. In 70s New York, everyone's hustling. Just not always for the right reasons. This is the natural ecosystem of a rent-controlled apartment, a blend of desperation, ingenuity, and the vague smell of cheese. You never know who you'll find in the hallway: a neighbor feeding a pigeon from her palm, a guy in a velvet suit hawking gently used stereo equipment, or a couple from the fourth floor arguing about whose turn it is to pay the electricity. If you ever wonder what the phrase urban jungle means, try sharing a single bathroom with 3 adults, one aspiring jazz musician, and a pet turtle named Rick James. Your roommate, the bathtub dweller, is a classic specimen. Failed poet, part-time bartender, full-time sleepwalker. His schedule is guided by the moon and the happy hour clock. He claims the tub is good for his back. Maybe it is. At least it's clean, unlike the couch, which is off limits after that burrito incident. You envy his ability to sleep through sirens, yelling, and the occasional explosion from the bodega down the street. Sometimes you think he's on to something. Rent is the apartment's cruel punchline. Every month is a group project, with all the group members performing interpretive dance instead of contributing cash. Money arrives in the form of crumpled bills, bus tokens, IOUs, and, if things are truly desperate, a few leftover Quaaludes and half a pack of cigarettes as incentive. The landlord, Mr. Polanski, is a ghostly figure rumored to have once been seen fixing a radiator in 1963. He appears only to demand payment or post angry notes about mysterious odors and unregistered chinchillas. You suspect he lives in a slightly nicer version of your apartment, just upstairs, his life ruled by a single ever-ringing rotary phone. Every interaction with the landlord is a performance review you didn't prepare for. He accepts cash, sometimes checks, and once, in a moment of weakness, an original copy of Saturday Night Fever on vinyl. If you're late, again, he gives you a speech about personal responsibility and the sanctity of the lease that could win a Tony Award for dramatic monologue. You promise to pay. He promises to evict, and the dance begins anew. Then there's the revolving cast of subletters, overnight guests, and random acquaintances who always seem to need just a place to crash for a couple of days. You find yourself making up new rules every week. No fondue parties on weekdays. Nothing that swims in the kitchen sink. If you finish the toilet paper, replace the roll. None of them are followed. The only constant is chaos, and maybe the turtle, who, like the rent, is never quite where you expect. Privacy is a theoretical concept. Doors don't fully close. Phone calls echo through thin walls, and your only alone time is the 3 minutes you spend in the stairwell pretending to smoke a cigarette just to avoid human contact. If you think you can hide your snacks, you're wrong. Food left in the fridge is communal property, subject to the finder's, eater's clause of New York apartment law. Your last yogurt was claimed in a midnight raid by your roommate, who insists he was sleep eating. Some days you fantasize about a quiet life, a studio apartment, a reliable landlord, a single room all to yourself. But you know you'd miss the weirdness, the accidental family you've built from necessity and low expectations, the roommate who always forgets rent, the landlord who's more rumor than man, the neighbors who come and go like sitcom extras. All of them are part of the survival kit for the era. If you're lucky, you'll make it another month with the lights on, the water running, and at least one appliance still functional. And if you're unlucky, well, there's always room in the tub. It's time for work, or what passes for it. You cram yourself into a graffiti-soaked subway car where half the passengers are sleeping, the other half are performing impromptu disco, and no one's paid fare since the Kennedy administration. The city beneath your feet is alive, thrumming, and just a little bit sticky. Welcome to the New York subway, 1976 edition, a place where reality, dreams, and the scent of stale pretzels collide. As you descend the chipped tile steps into the subway station, you're greeted by the unmistakable aroma of hot rubber, old newsprint, and the world's largest population of rats, who are both braver and better dressed than half the passengers. The turnstiles are more like suggestions than obstacles. You flash your token, or maybe just your best dead-eyed stare, and squeeze through a gap in the barrier, following the unwritten rule that if you move fast enough, the laws of physics and transit police don't apply. On the platform, there's a symphony of sounds, a busker wailing on a saxophone, a woman yelling at her boyfriend, a man in a cape practicing karate moves no one asked to see. You check the faded subway map, but it's just for show. The trains never arrive on schedule. You could wait 3 minutes or 30, and no amount of squinting will bring the A train any faster. You glance at your watch, which helpfully informs you that time is a social construct anyway. When the train finally shudders to a halt, the doors wheeze open and you're pulled into the crush by the invisible, unstoppable force known as the morning rush. The seats are all taken, some by humans, some by newspapers, some by a dog wearing sunglasses and what might be your missing scarf. You grab a metal pole, sticky, of course, and try not to make eye contact with anyone, which is a challenge, since someone is always staring. The ride itself is a fever dream. A businessman practices his presentation aloud. A kid in bell-bottoms spins in circles. A group of teenagers rehearses their dance routine in the aisle. You try to read your book, but every paragraph is punctuated by the conductor's garbled announcements. Next stop, mumble grand something done to leave your stuff unattended. The car jolts violently. You spill coffee on your shirt and mentally subtract another $1 from your dignity account. If you're lucky, the train will only stop twice for signal problems. If you're unlucky, you'll spend the next 20 minutes wedged under an armpit, contemplating the wisdom of ever leaving your apartment. Someone lights a cigarette, someone else starts selling candy bars, and at least one person is definitely clipping their toenails. It's a public space, sure, but also a lawless one. Every stop is a new adventure. Buskers, evangelists, and once, a woman with an iguana on a leash. You see fashion statements that defy logic and possibly physics, platform shoes, polyester suits, sunglasses the size of salad plates. Every other person looks like they might be famous, or at least claim to be. The air is thick with stories, secrets, and enough secondhand smoke to cloud your vision. Your stop approaches, but exiting is another challenge. You squeeze past 3 napping commuters and one man who has achieved perfect zen in the lotus position, somehow hovering 3 inches above the grimy floor. The doors open, and you burst onto the platform like a contestant in an obstacle course, heart pounding, coffee gone, and dignity further reduced. By the time you reach the street, the chaos of the subway lingers. The smell of hot brakes in your nose, a faint disco tune still echoing in your ears, and a single sock, not yours, clinging to your pant leg. But you made it. You survived the underground circus, battered but triumphant, ready to face whatever else the city throws at you, probably another commute home. You finally arrive at your job, which is somehow still waiting for you. Your productivity depends entirely on whether you took too many or not quite enough sedatives. You're either Zen master calm or typing reports with your forehead. The office, such as it is an open-plan wasteland of brown cubicles and flickering fluorescent lights, where every desk is adorned with a half-dead plant, a mug full of pencils no one uses, and at least one ceramic owl. You greet the receptionist, who greets you back with a look that says, "You're late, but so is everyone else." Your boss is in the back, clutching a coffee like it's a flotation device, while your co-workers compare the size of their hangovers with the seriousness of accountants discussing quarterly losses. You sidle over to your desk, plop into your squeaky chair, and let out a sigh. You have exactly two choices: grind out paperwork with the nervous energy of a caffeinated squirrel, or drift into blissful pharmaceutical detachment, so relaxed you might just fuse with the upholstery. On a good day, you find the sweet spot, just the right combination of sedation and anxiety, producing a work rhythm best described as slow-motion panic. Your job, on paper, is junior accounts associate, but in reality, it's a combination of data entry, phone call avoidance, and pretending to know what synergy means. The computer is the size of a small refrigerator, and it groans to life with a sound that suggests it's actually powered by the sadness of office workers everywhere. You tap at the keys, hoping your fingers remember how to spell your own name, and open your inbox to a stack of memos that all boil down to, "Please do the thing you were supposed to do yesterday." If you're feeling the full force of your morning Quaalude, even a simple task becomes an adventure. Filing paperwork? Suddenly the pages feel like silk and time slows to a crawl. Returning calls? You forget what you were saying halfway through your own name. Your phone voice is so mellow you accidentally put the client to sleep. In meetings, you master the art of nodding off with your eyes open, a skill that takes years of practice and a carefully timed dose. On the other hand, if you're running a little light on pharmaceuticals, office life becomes an obstacle course of minor irritations and existential dread. The copier jams. The coffee pot is empty. Someone ate your yogurt. Again. Your boss asks for that report, and you have no memory of what that even means. You contemplate starting a new life as a professional roller skater or a disco backup dancer, something with less paperwork and fewer acronyms. Around you, the office hums with its own quiet desperation. The IT guy is reading Rolling Stone under his desk. The intern is secretly running a side business, selling knockoff Ray-Bans out of the supply closet. In the break room, two co-workers are having a whispered argument about whether it's legal to nap under the conference table. No one questions your slightly glassy stare. If anything, it's a mark of professionalism. Lunch is a ritual break from pretending to work. Everyone files out to the nearest greasy diner, returning with sandwiches, fries, and just enough coffee to jumpstart a horse. The afternoon slump is brutal. Phones ring off the hook, memos multiply like rabbits, and you realize you've spent the last 20 minutes staring at a single stapler, contemplating the meaning of life. Every so often, there's a flash of actual productivity, a burst of energy when the caffeine and the Quaalude overlap in perfect harmony. You knock out 6 memos, 3 reports, and a crossword puzzle. Then reward yourself by spinning in your chair and pretending you're on Wheel of Fortune. Your co-workers cheer you on. They're just as sedated as you. As the day winds down, you gather your things, sign off on a stack of papers you'll have to redo tomorrow, and promise your boss you'll definitely finish that big project first thing. He nods, knowing full well that first thing means maybe by Friday, if the city's still standing. You leave the office calm, collected, and only a little bit numb. You may not have been the most productive worker, but hey, at least you didn't type your resignation letter by accident. That's what counts in the productivity masterclass that is 1970s office life. The office crowd migrates to a greasy spoon. You order a tuna melt, coffee, and try to remember how to chew. Your co-workers trade Valium like baseball cards and debate which bar's bathroom is the least likely to feature a rat the size of a poodle. This is the golden hour of 1970s lunch, equal parts ritual, escape, and group therapy session, conducted in a haze of nicotine and questionable egg salad. The diner is a time capsule, upholstered in vinyl the color of canned yams, with cracked formica counters and waitresses who call you hone, but can break up a fight with a single glare. The coffee is both bottomless and bottom tier, poured from a carafe that's probably never seen a dishwasher. You gulp it down anyway, because in New York, caffeine is a food group. You slide into a booth, legs sticking slightly to the seat. The table wobbles, but the condiments are always steady. Ketchup, mustard, sugar packets, and a sticky glass jar of Sweet and Low. Someone orders fries for the table, because fries are the great unifier. The air buzzes with the clatter of plates, the hiss of a griddle, and a jukebox playing the Bee Gees a little too loud. The menu is a love letter to cholesterol, tuna melts, grilled cheese, meatloaf, and mystery soup of the day. If you're feeling health conscious, you order a chef's salad, which is basically iceberg lettuce buried under ham, turkey, and 3 types of cheese. You consider ordering the clam chowder until you remember what happened to Ted from accounting. No one talks about Ted. Lunch is less about food and more about survival. Your co-workers are experts in pill foraging, digging through purses and pockets with the focus of archaeologists. Someone produces a bottle of Valium with a practiced flourish, like a magician revealing a rabbit. Offers are made. I'll trade you 1 Valium for 2 Tylenol and a stick of gum. Someone else pulls out a handful of orange prescription bottles, shakes them like maracas, and asks if anyone needs to take the edge off. The phrase, "take the edge off," has become office shorthand for make it through the afternoon without sobbing into your typewriter. You glance at your boss, sitting at the counter, trying to look inconspicuous as he sprinkles a mystery powder into his orange juice. There's a silent agreement in the room. What happens at lunch stays at lunch. Nobody is here to judge. In fact, solidarity is strong enough that the only thing anyone side-eyes is the decision to order decaf. In between bites, the conversation jumps from last night's club adventures to the latest office rumor. Someone claims to have spotted Mick Jagger at Studio 54. Another confesses to waking up in Queens with a roll of quarters and no memory of how they got there. But mostly, everyone is just trying to decompress before going back to fluorescent purgatory. The highlight of the meal is the ongoing debate about which bar has the cleanest bathroom. This is not a question of luxury, but survival. The reigning champion is O'Malley's on 14th, where the toilets flush and the soap is only slightly watered down. The runner-up is a dive called the Cat's Pajamas, famous for its jukebox and infamous for the time someone found a raccoon sleeping in the supply closet. Someone orders a slice of pie for dessert, apple, allegedly. It arrives with a scoop of ice cream and the lingering taste of freezer burn. You eat it anyway, grateful for anything sweet in a city that so often tastes like concrete and regret. The bill comes. Everyone chips in, tossing crumpled bills and loose change into a sticky pile. Someone tries to pay with a Quaalude. The waitress doesn't blink. Back in the office, bellies full and spirits slightly dulled, you settle in for the afternoon. The diner, for a brief, shining moment, has made the city feel almost kind. Or maybe that's just the Valium talking. Either way, you've survived lunch. Again. And in 1970s New York, that's nothing short of a miracle. If you need a little privacy for your next pharmaceutical adventure, there's always the bathroom. Half the stalls are occupied. The other half are being used to negotiate deals. It's not so much a restroom as it is a community center for low-stakes crime. You push open the heavy door, which groans in protest like it's personally offended by your presence. The air hits you, part industrial cleanser, part something far less legal. There's a distinct perfume, a blend of cheap aftershave, burning matches, and that faint medicinal whiff of crushed pills. The floor is always a little too slick, the tiles permanently damp, and the graffiti on the stall doors ranges from questionable phone numbers to psychedelic renderings of Richard Nixon. You never sit unless you absolutely have to, and even then, you perform an acrobatic hover that would make an Olympic gymnast proud. Inside, the stalls are tiny cubicles of chaos and commerce. In the far corner, a pair of shoes faces the wrong way, indicating someone's either napping, hiding from their supervisor, or composing the next great American novel on the back of a toilet paper roll. The middle stall is occupied by two people negotiating a trade: Valium for a pack of cigarettes, a Quaalude for a slice of cold pizza, or sometimes just life advice delivered in whispers over the divider. Privacy, of course, is relative. There's always someone knocking, asking how much longer you'll be. You develop a system: 2 taps for almost done, 3 for come back after the disco era ends. The mirrors are streaked and cracked, reflecting your face in cubist fragments. It's hard to know whether you look mysterious or just mildly haunted. If you need a moment alone, the bathroom is your only sanctuary, unless you count the fire escape, which is usually occupied by someone practicing the saxophone or attempting to commune with pigeons. Here, with your feet planted firmly and carefully on sticky linoleum, you can finally take stock. You fish a pill bottle from your pocket, shake out something ambiguous, and chase it with a sip of warm water from the faucet. The ritual is strangely soothing, like a meditation that smells faintly of bleach. There's always the risk of interruption. The boss might wander in, humming "Stayin' Alive," only to discover a full-on pharmaceutical swap meet in the third stall. You nod solemnly at each other, a mutual agreement not to see or mention what just happened. Everyone in the office knows the real deals go down in the bathroom, not the boardroom. It's where people confess, conspire, and occasionally break down crying after their third rejected memo of the day. The stalls are a place for legends. You hear whispered stories about the time someone accidentally locked themselves in and started a side business selling Tylenol and emotional support, or the time 2 co-workers met, shared a sedative, and fell in love over the sound of the janitor's mop. These are the things office culture is built on: awkward, hilarious, a little sad, and entirely human. No detail is too small. The eternally empty paper towel dispenser, the one faucet that only spits out scalding water, the air freshener that long ago gave up the fight. You start to recognize people by their shoes under the stalls. There's a camaraderie here, a sense that you're all just trying to make it to 5 o'clock with your dignity and your prescription intact. Before you leave, you check your hair in the mirror, adjust your collar, and make sure there's no suspicious powder clinging to your face. The world outside might be relentless, but in here, for a few precious minutes, you're safe. Or at least safer than in the elevator with your boss. You step back into the hallway, a little lighter, a little fuzzier, and a little more prepared to face whatever the 1970s workplace throws at you. Because in this decade, the bathroom stall isn't just a pit stop. It's a lifeline, a trading post, and sometimes, when the world feels overwhelming, a tiny, graffiti-covered temple of peace. On your lunch hour, you dodge an elaborate parade of street hustlers, day drinkers, and at least one person selling genuine Rolexes out of a trench coat. Everyone is someone, or at least pretending hard enough to get away with it. The moment you hit the sidewalk, New York grabs you by the lapels and shakes you awake. The streets pulse with energy and questionable motives. The air is heavy with car exhaust, roasted peanuts, and the aroma of hot dogs that have been spinning in glass cases since disco was invented. Every step is a negotiation with fate. You're either heading for opportunity or into a low-grade scam orchestrated by a guy named Tony, who swears on his mother he once met Cher. Sidewalks are crowded, not just with people, but with a cast of characters straight out of Central Casting. There's the guy juggling bowling pins for tips, the woman in gold lame handing out flyers for a nightclub where the password is always dynamite. A small crowd gathers around a 3-card Monte table, part game, part theater, all fleecing. You keep your hands in your pockets. You know better. Lunch in the city isn't just about eating. It's about survival and spectacle. Vendors hawk everything from knockoff sunglasses to designer handbags that still smell like Chinatown plastic. "Psst, hey, you want to watch?" the man whispers, flashing a dozen shiny fakes from inside his coat. Each one is set to a different time zone. None of them are right. Somewhere between the pizza joint and the subway entrance, a saxophonist belts out a solo, playing for coins and applause. Day drinkers lounge on stoops, brown paper bags clutched like security blankets, regaling anyone who'll listen with tales of their glory days, most of which involve Studio 54, at least 2 ex-wives, and an incident with a ferret no one quite believes. And then there are the hustlers, young, old, stylish, scruffy, all with a pitch. They promise everything: a miracle cure for baldness, tickets to a sold-out show, a limited edition cassette tape of the Rolling Stones' secret rehearsal. You know it's a lie, but you kind of want to believe. After all, everyone's hustling something, even you. Dealers lurk at corners, their transactions disguised as casual conversations or chess games that never actually progress past the third move. You watch 2 guys shake hands, exchange a folded piece of paper, and walk away in opposite directions like it's a magic trick. No one blinks. It's New York. If you start questioning things, you'll never get anywhere. Mixed into this carnival is the walk of shame, that daily migration of people who look like they never made it home last night. Hair wild, eyeliner smudged, still wearing yesterday's disco attire, they make their way back to reality with as much dignity as they can muster. They blend into the tapestry of the city, just another pattern in the plaid chaos. A sudden shout catches your attention. Someone selling umbrellas during a sun shower, their prices doubling as the clouds thicken. The ice cream truck on the next block plays a tune that sounds more threatening than cheerful, and you can't be sure if the guy behind the counter is selling bomb pops or booking bets on the Yankees. You dodge a kid on roller skates, sidestep a mime who's stuck in an invisible box of self-doubt, and finally reach your destination. Breathless, wallet still intact, pride only slightly dented. You survived another lunch hour in New York's street bazaar, where the line between scam and opportunity is as thin as a dime, and everyone's just trying to make it to dinner with their shoes and optimism still attached. By the time you head back to work, you're lighter by a few coins, heavier by a story, and grateful, deeply, sincerely grateful that in a city full of hustlers, at least you're never bored. Night falls, which means it's time to put on your finest polyester, pop a fresh Quaalude, and shuffle into the fever dream that is the New York disco scene. Every club is full, every bathroom is busier, and everyone is beautiful if you squint just right. The transformation from day to night is miraculous. 1 minute you're a half-asleep office drone. The next you're reborn in a shimmering shirt, hair feathered within an inch of its life, and bell-bottoms that threaten to engulf small animals. Your mirror lies to you kindly, the lighting in your apartment forgiving every bad decision and questionable mustache. You look ready to headline at Studio 54, or at least not get turned away at the door. Stepping out, the city pulses with anticipation. Taxis honk, neon signs flicker, and everyone on the street is heading somewhere more interesting than you are. You queue up outside the hottest clubs, surrounded by a tribe of beautiful strangers, all equal in the democracy of the velvet rope. The bouncer surveys the line like a minor Roman emperor. Entry isn't guaranteed. Sometimes it's a smile. Sometimes it's a name drop. Sometimes it's pure, uncut luck. If you do make it past the door, congratulations. You're officially a citizen of disco heaven. Inside, the atmosphere is electric. Strobe lights slice through clouds of cigarette smoke. The walls throb with bass, and the dance floor is a wild organism, moving as one, then scattering, then reforming like a flock of shiny, half-dressed birds. Donna Summer and the Bee Gees are inescapable. Everyone's got moves, whether they know it or not. In this room, confidence is the only currency that matters. Dating is a contact sport. You lock eyes with a stranger across the bar, shout introductions over the music, and decide in seconds whether to make your move or pretend you're just here for the drinks. Nobody remembers last names, and everyone has an alias, or at least a story that's gotten better with every telling. You flirt, you laugh, you share a cigarette in the alley, and by midnight you're convinced you're soulmates, or, at the very least, mutually attractive for the next 3 hours. You pop a Quaalude to take the edge off, then another just because you can. The first one makes you mellow. The second makes you forget you were ever nervous at all. Conversation flows freely, lubricated by vodka tonics and the sort of disco optimism that makes everyone's future look fabulous and fuzzy around the edges. Couples form and dissolve on the dance floor, hands sliding, hips swaying, boundaries blurring under the mirror ball's hypnotic gaze. Every club has its own mythology. Studio 54 with its celebrity sightings and flying glitter cannons, Xenon with its laser shows and bottomless punch bowls, Paradise Garage where the music goes until sunrise, and the love is equally boundless. In every bathroom, a line snakes past the stalls, half waiting to powder their noses, the other half finalizing business deals or romantic entanglements in whispers and giggles. You could spend an entire evening just people watching, and you wouldn't regret it. Sequins catch the light like fireflies, and for a few enchanted hours, everyone is beautiful, mysterious, and slightly out of focus. Time is elastic in the disco scene. You check your watch, if you haven't pawned it, and suddenly it's 3 a.m. Your date is spinning beside you, promising you breakfast at a diner in Queens, or maybe tickets to a Bowie concert that may or may not exist. Decisions are made with the sort of wild abandon you can only muster in youth, under neon, with a prescription or two to steady your hand. Eventually, the lights come up and reality trickles in. You stumble into the early morning air, arm in arm with someone whose name you've already forgotten, searching for coffee, a cab, or just the next adventure. You promise to call, knowing you probably won't. That's just the way of the night, ephemeral, electrifying, and destined to be half remembered, if remembered at all. In the end, you head home with your feet sore, your head spinning, and a single thought echoing in the emptiness. What a time to be young, anonymous, and slightly sedated in the city that never really sleeps, just shimmies until dawn. If you're lucky, or have bribed the right bouncer, you make it into Studio 54. Inside, the air is half glitter, half controlled substance. You lose yourself to the music, the fog, and the general feeling that gravity is just a suggestion. The outside world melts away the second you cross the threshold. It's not just a nightclub, it's a living, breathing circus, engineered to obliterate whatever drab reality you dragged in off the street. A golden light show bursts over the crowd as bodies sway and shimmer, sequins sparkling, polyester clinging, everyone dripping in enough perfume to single-handedly deplete the ozone layer. No one here remembers what day it is. Time is measured in beats per minute, and the number of drinks it takes to forget your own name. There are no rules, except that rules don't apply. If you're famous, you enter through the front. If you're merely interesting, you sneak in the back. The coat check line alone is an exhibition: furs, velvet capes, cowboy hats, and the occasional toga. Everyone's dressed for a theme, even if the theme is just, "Look at me, I exist." Andy Warhol might be in the VIP, Cher is probably dancing on a table, and someone who claims to be Mick Jagger is crying in the bathroom about losing a shoe. Studio 54 is designed for sensory overload. Giant silver moons swing from the ceiling, stars dangle on invisible wires, and the famous Moonface logo winks at you with a mischievous smile. At any given moment, you might witness a horse trotting through the dance floor, a mountain of balloons raining down from the rafters, or a surprise performance by Grace Jones, usually all in the same night. It's not so much a party as a fever dream, curated by people who think reality is something that happens to other people. Every inch of the club is a story in progress. In the main room, the music is relentless. Donna Summer, Chic, Gloria Gaynor, all played so loud your heart thumps in sympathy. The DJ spins records like a high priest, presiding over a congregation in various stages of transcendence. Dancers crowd the stage, their bodies glistening under the lights, hair whipped by invisible wind machines, faces plastered with expressions of euphoria, confusion, or both. The bathrooms are their own ecosystem. Powder, perfume, giggling secrets, quick fixes, and accidental confessions. You bump into someone famous, or at least someone who swears they're about to be. Everyone's making deals, movie scripts, record contracts, clandestine romances, all over the porcelain altar. You glance in the mirror, and for a moment, you almost believe you're a superstar too. You slip into the VIP room, if you're lucky or persuasive, or just happen to have a spare Quaalude for the door guy. Here, the drinks flow, the gossip flies, and the laws of physics are ignored entirely. Conversations are snippets of absurdity. Are you going to Fire Island tomorrow? Did you see Liza last week? I think I just danced with Truman Capote. The couches are plush, the laughter is louder, and everyone is pretending not to notice the line for the bathroom that never, ever gets shorter. At some point, you find yourself out on the dance floor, wrapped in the embrace of strangers who feel like best friends, moving as one organism, a tidal wave of polyester and sweat and ecstatic noise. Gravity means nothing here. You could float right out the door and into the stars, if only the bouncer would let you back in again. By the time the lights come up, you're glittering, exhausted, a little bit lost, and a lot more legend than when you arrived. You stagger onto the street, heart pounding, shoes ruined, hair wild, and pockets full of phone numbers you'll never call. Maybe it was heaven, maybe it was hell, but one thing's for sure. Studio 54 was never just another night out. It was a portal to somewhere stranger, brighter, and, if only for a few hours, utterly free. Your friends in the city are a patchwork quilt of party animals, aspiring poets, trust fund disasters, and people who may or may not be in witness protection. Most of your bonds were forged over borrowed lighters and shared sedatives. In 1970s New York, finding your people doesn't mean brunch on Sundays and book clubs. It means the midnight crowd on your stoop, the rotating cast of regulars at your favorite bar, and whoever still picks up the phone after 2 a.m. Friendships are transactional and transcendent at the same time. You know who has the best connections for club guest lists, who can call a cab at 4 a.m., and, most crucially, who always seems to have an extra Quaalude when life gets a little too sharp around the edges. The bonds you make aren't delicate or dainty. They're resilient, woven through sleepless nights, record-spinning marathons, and the kind of confessions that only come after your third cocktail and your second Valium. You might not remember your own address, but you know exactly which friend will bring you chicken soup when you're sick, or at least call and recommend a good deli. Everyone is someone else's emergency contact, even if emergency is just running out of cigarettes before payday. You find your closest confidants in the most unlikely places. Maybe it's the girl who let you cut in line at Studio 54, or the guy who bailed you out when you left your wallet in a taxi. Sometimes it's your neighbor across the hall who lets you use his phone because yours is perpetually out of service, or the bartender who always remembers your order and your secrets. Half your social circle is on a first-name-only basis, and you're not sure if that's because of privacy or just a collective inability to remember surnames after a long night out. Trust is a weird thing in this world. You don't always know where your friends came from or what they're running from. The party animal from Brooklyn claims to have met David Bowie twice. The aspiring poet has a poem about you scrawled in her notebook, right next to an overdue rent reminder. The trust fund kid is forever broke, but somehow always has concert tickets. The guy who works in finance only uses cash and doesn't have a last name that matches any mailbox in your building. And yet, they're your people. When the chips are down, when you need a place to crash, a shoulder to cry on, or just someone to distract the landlord, they're there, at least until someone offers them a better party. Loyalty comes in strange shapes. Friends will trade pills for a cab ride, keep your secrets even when they're fuzzy on the details, and help you home when you're one Quaalude over the line. You return the favor in small, meaningful ways, covering for them at work, letting them crash on your couch, or showing up at 3 a.m. with greasy takeout and zero judgment. Plans are always tentative. Let's meet at 10 means sometime before last call, and I'll call you tomorrow is a gentle lie everyone forgives. You'll spend hours talking about dreams, schemes, and wild ideas that may or may not survive the morning light. No one's on a straight path. Most of you are zigzagging from gig to gig, from high to low and back again. But the city is full of kindred spirits, all searching for a place to belong, a story to share, or just someone to walk them home after the club closes. In a city this loud, big, and relentless, it's the oddball friendships, strange, hilarious, a little bit broken, that make you feel less alone. You may not remember every name or every night, but you'll never forget the feeling of finding your tribe, even if you only recognize them by their shoes under the bathroom stall, or the lighter they always borrowed but never returned. Because in 1970s New York, the best friends are the ones who help you survive the madness. One pill, one laugh, and one borrowed lighter at a time. The after-party begins at someone's apartment, where the seating is a mix of beanbags, shag carpet, and sleeping humans. You can't remember the host's name, but they have a blender, so you're staying. There's no invitation, just a whispered, "You coming?" as the club lights flicker on and you and your new best friends wander into the night, trailing glitter, perfume, and a vague sense of optimism. Apartment parties in 1970s. New York are less about having a plan and more about finding the nearest building where someone left the door open. This one smells like sandalwood, melted vinyl, and last week's pizza, but the music's good and there's always someone to talk to, at least until they fall asleep mid-sentence. The living room is a patchwork of comfort and chaos. Every inch of floor is claimed by a beanbag chair, a threadbare couch, or a pile of shag carpet that's seen more bare feet than a yoga studio. Someone's cousin is passed out on the balcony, shoes off, disco ball hat still firmly on. You squeeze between a lava lamp and a potted plant, or possibly someone's attempt at hydroponic farming, and claim a spot on a corduroy cushion that puffs up a cloud of dust every time you move. Furniture is whatever someone could haul up the stairs. Milk crates double as tables. Someone's old mattress leaned against the wall, and the kitchen counter is a shrine to half-finished cocktails and sticky bottle caps. You find yourself perched on the arm of a faded recliner, chatting with a girl whose eyeliner is still perfect at 3 a.m., swapping stories and compliments and possibly phone numbers, though neither of you can find a pen. Every party has its cast of regulars: the amateur DJ with an encyclopedic record collection, the mixologist whose blender is always running, the aspiring screenwriter pitching a script to anyone who will listen. Someone's cat weaves between legs, accepting scratches and crumbs, blissfully unaware that the odds of finding a clean water dish are roughly zero. The host is both everywhere and nowhere, flitting from room to room, topping off drinks, occasionally stopping to untangle the cord of the rotary phone or explain why the bathroom door doesn't quite close. It's an open-door policy in every sense. Friends bring friends, strangers bring snacks, and nobody ever checks the guest list. People drift in and out, some dressed for the club, others for bed, everyone united by their willingness to dance in socks on the linoleum. The party soundtrack is a war between disco and punk, with the occasional ballad sung loudly by a group on the fire escape. If you're lucky, the neighbors join in instead of calling the cops. Snacks appear and disappear with astonishing speed. Bowls of pretzels, cold pizza slices, chips that crunch like gravel, and an experimental dip that's mostly just ranch dressing and hope. Drinks flow in mismatched glasses, coffee mugs, or straight from the bottle. Someone tries to make margaritas in the blender, but the lid flies off, and the resulting geyser only adds to the sticky charm of the place. Conversations veer from the philosophical, what if we all just moved to California, to the practical. Does anyone know how to unclog a sink with just a shoe and good intentions? There's talk of politics, poetry, and who got kicked out of Studio 54 this week. Occasionally, someone finds a guitar and attempts a sing-along, badly. Nobody minds. It's not about the music. It's about not wanting the night to end. As dawn threatens, people pair off for cab rides or settle into corners for a nap. You're offered a blanket, a pillow, or just a spot on the floor. The apartment is a maze of limbs and laughter, the city outside finally quiet for a few hours. You drift to sleep in a pile of strangers and friends, grateful for the chaos and the comfort, and the certain knowledge that, in this decade, home is wherever the party is still going at sunrise. You wake up to the sound of a blender, the taste of old cigarette butts, and the realization that you may have accidentally joined a cult. Your head feels like it's been filled with wet cement, and gravity is very, very real. Somehow, the apartment looks both exactly as you remember and inexplicably worse. There are people scattered across every available surface, some asleep, some groaning, some staring at the ceiling with the wide-eyed horror of someone who just remembered they left their car parked in a tow zone 3 boroughs away. The light streaming through the window is unreasonably bright, punishing you for your disco sins. There's a sticky ring around your mouth from what might have once been a cocktail, and your tongue feels like you've been using it to mop the subway platform. Moving is a challenge. Every limb resists the call to action. Lifting your head is a 2-step process. First, negotiate with your neck. Second, regret all your life choices. Your thoughts come in slow, shuffling waves. Where are your shoes? Is this your shirt? Are you still technically alive? Or have you crossed into some kind of polyester purgatory? The answer, disappointingly, is yes to all of the above. The blender roars again. Someone in the kitchen is attempting to make breakfast margaritas, which is either heroic or a sign of the end times. The smell of scorched toast and burnt coffee blends with the ever-present aroma of stale cigarettes, patchouli, and existential dread. You make a mental note never to sleep this close to an ashtray again, a promise you will break at least twice more this week. Every sound is magnified. Laughter from the bathroom, the hiss of the shower, the thump of shoes being hunted down in the shag carpet. Someone is retelling the story of how they ended up in the apartment, and then the guy in the panda suit said, "No, you call the cab." Another person is looking for their purse, their dignity, and a working lighter, not necessarily in that order. The physical symptoms are a carnival of regret. Your mouth is dry, your brain is slow, and every joint aches in protest. Quaaludes may make you sleep like a tranquilized bear, but they extract payment in full upon waking. Your body is made of cement and sandpaper, your stomach gurgling with suspicion at the idea of eating. You eye the cold pizza on the counter, decide against it, and reach for the nearest glass of water, only to realize it's half vodka and half backwash. Hydration can wait. Emotionally, you're on a roller coaster built by amateur carpenters. Guilt and shame ride shotgun with flashes of euphoria. Did I really dance with that woman on the table? Was I good? Memory loss is a feature, not a bug, but little snippets return. Neon lights, a friendly stranger, someone handing you a lemon wedge and insisting it was medicinal. The fog lifts just long enough for you to remember that you promised to help a friend move today. You sigh, roll over, and text them something vague about feeling under the weather. Eventually, necessity forces you upright. The search for Advil begins. Every medicine cabinet is full of expired mystery pills and at least one prescription from a doctor who's probably fled the country by now. You settle for aspirin and a splash of orange juice from a carton so old it's practically fermented. At this point, you consider it a mimosa. You limp to the bathroom and stare at yourself in the mirror. Your reflection is a cautionary tale, but you've seen worse. Splashing water on your face, you mutter a promise to take it easy tonight. By noon, you're already making plans for the next party, because if there's one thing the Quaalude hangover teaches you, it's that the real danger isn't in the pills or the parties. It's in thinking you'll ever learn your lesson. In 1970s New York, you survived the hangover not with regret, but with resilience. A cup of black coffee, and the knowledge that someone, somewhere, is already blending round two. Need a refill? Time to find a doctor willing to write a prescription for anything you can pronounce. Luckily, the city's full of them, and none of them have ever asked a follow-up question. This is the golden age of American pharmaceuticals, when every other street corner hides a clinic, every corner clinic hides a doctor, and every doctor has a prescription pad that's looser than a disco dancer's hips. In 1970s New York, the healthcare system is equal parts game show and scavenger hunt, and the rules are made up as you go along. You wake up with a handful of empty pill bottles and a to-do list that reads 1. Get more pills. 2. Try not to look suspicious. 3. Breakfast? You begin your journey with the local drugstore, the epicenter of hope, desperation, and more than a few criminal enterprises. The neon sign out front flickers, promising health, beauty, savings. Inside, but mostly delivers a selection of candy bars, cough syrup, and a wall of behind-the-counter bottles guarded by a pharmacist who's seen everything and will believe nothing. You take a number and wait. The line is a parade of familiar faces. The insomniac night nurse, the cabbie with a limp, the woman in a fur coat buying cough drops and 3 boxes of laxatives. Everyone's got a story, and every story is essentially the same. My doctor says I need something for my nerves. I've got a bad back, doc. My cat can't sleep, and neither can I. The pharmacist doesn't care. He slides the white paper bag across the counter and gives you a nod that says, "Don't tell me. I don't want to know." If you need something extra, something the law frowns upon, or your old doctor won't approve, there's always the side hustle. Doctors in the 70s are part healer, part dealer. Referrals are whispered in smoky bars, written on the backs of napkins, passed along with a handshake and a wink. Walk-ins are welcome. The waiting room is a fever dream of hustlers, club kids, and the occasional grandmother who just wants her nerve medicine. You walk into the exam room and recite the script. I'm anxious, can't sleep, life in the city, you know? The doctor barely glances up. He scribbles on a pad, sometimes with both hands at once, and asks you a single question. How many? If you're lucky, he'll throw in a few samples, a pat on the back, and a reminder to drink plenty of fluids. If you're unlucky, he'll try to sell you vitamins too. Either way, you walk out with a prescription that would make a pharmacist blush and enough pills to open your own speakeasy. Then comes the hustle, rotating through pharmacies so nobody gets suspicious, swapping stories with friends about which place gives the best service. Some stores require ID, others just a winning smile and a willingness to buy a magazine or two as camouflage. If you're especially desperate, there's always that guy down on Avenue B who claims to be practically a doctor and will sell you mystery pills from a velvet pouch. You know you shouldn't trust him, but his prices are good and his hours are better. Back home, you restock your personal pharmacy. The pill bottles line up on the nightstand like trophies from a particularly challenging scavenger hunt. Each one comes with a story, a white lie to the doctor, a long wait at the counter, a handshake in a shadowy hallway. You might feel a twinge of guilt, but mostly you feel relief. The city is loud, relentless, and unpredictable. Your little orange bottles are the only things standing between you and a full-blown meltdown over your rent, your job, or the state of your shag carpet. Every now and then, you wonder if it's all a little too easy. But then you remember, everyone's doing it. Your boss, your friends, even your neighbor with the impressive stamp collection. In this city, the real prescription is survival. The pills are just the delivery method. You lie back, pop a tablet, and listen to the city hum outside your window. You're set for another week, or at least until your next appointment. Because in 1970s New York, hustling prescriptions isn't just a way of life. It's an art form, a lifeline, and the only healthcare plan you'll ever really trust. Sometimes the 70s weren't all fun and games. Every so often, paranoia creeps in. Are the cops coming? Did someone rat you out? Or is this just the side effect of too many barbiturates and a conscience you last saw in 1972? The city feels different when you're looking over your shoulder. Suddenly, every siren is personal. Every knock at the door could be the moment your luck finally runs out. It's not that you're a hardened criminal, you're more of a freelance rule bender, a connoisseur of gray areas. But in New York, 1976, even jaywalking feels like an act of mild rebellion. And when you've got 3 Quaaludes in your sock and a friend who knows a guy, that anxiety is as much a part of the experience as disco and debt. Walking down the street, you develop what can only be described as a sixth sense. You scan for blue uniforms, for unmarked sedans idling at the curb, for men with mustaches so aggressive they have to be undercover. You learn to spot a plainclothes cop by the way he tries and fails to blend in, suit too stiff, shoes too shiny, eyes too alert for a guy claiming to be lost in Times Square. Inside the club, the vibe can shift in an instant. Someone shouts "narc," and everyone suddenly remembers an errand they have to run, now. People scatter, drinks are abandoned, and the idadi air is filled with a new kind of energy, fear and adrenaline. The DJ might switch to a mellow track, hoping to cool things off, or crank the music up to drown out the tension. You stay cool, or at least pretend to. Everyone's a little suspicious. After all, you met half these people last night, and no one's real name is on the lease. Back at the apartment, paranoia follows you home. You deadbolt the door, triple-check the windows, and turn down the lights. The phone rings, and you freeze. Is it your mom? Is it the landlord? Is it the cops calling just to mess with you? You let the machine get it. If you're lucky, you don't have a machine. Answering machines are just more evidence, after all. Sometimes the paranoia is justified. Cops are everywhere, and the city's on edge. Mayor Beam's fighting crime, which mostly means hassling kids in bell-bottoms and raiding the occasional after-hours party. Your friend got arrested last week for possession. Turns out it's just for my nerves doesn't hold up in court. You vow to be more careful, to keep your stash in a safer place, maybe behind the box of rice-a-roni in the pantry. No cop has ever looked there. But more often, it's just your imagination running laps. You hear footsteps on the stairs and expect a SWAT team. You see a guy with a camera and assume he's collecting evidence, not memories. You can't decide if that weird taste in your mouth is guilt or just cheap gin. You become an amateur psychologist, diagnosing yourself and your friends with everything from acute stress disorder to bad vibes, man. And yet, the fear can be a rush. It keeps you sharp, awake, alive in a city that never truly sleeps. Your stories have more bite when you tell them the next day. The time you almost got arrested, the night you outsmarted the undercover cop, the close call in the back room of a bar where someone insisted on doing business in the men's room. Survival is half paranoia, half improvisation. Inevitably, everyone knows someone who got busted. A roommate, a coworker, that guy who used to DJ on Thursdays and now has gone upstate for a while. Arrest is less a tragedy and more of a rite of passage, something you trade stories about at parties. If you get picked up, you keep your mouth shut, call your cousin, and hope you remember the number for legal aid. So you keep moving, keep hustling, keep an eye on every shadow. Because in 1970s New York, paranoia isn't a flaw, it's a survival skill. The cops might not be after you, but you're not taking any chances. And besides, everyone knows the city's a little safer when you're just a little bit scared. Eventually, you call your mom. She asks how you're doing. You say great while balancing a Quaalude bottle on your forehead and trying not to slur. She knows. She always knows. There's something about dialing home from a New York apartment in the 70s that turns even the toughest disco warrior into a nervous 12-year-old again. The rotary phone feels impossibly heavy in your hand, the cord twisted into knots from too many late-night pep talks and tearful breakups. You pace between the avocado green fridge and the window, rehearsing answers to the questions you know are coming. Are you eating enough? How's work? Are you still hanging around with that girl who talks too loud? You clear your throat and do your best impression of a responsible adult. Everything's fine, Mom. Work is busy. You leave out the part where work means showing up 3 days a week and spending most of your time inventing new reasons to avoid your boss. She asks if you've made any nice friends. You mention a few names. Half are real. The other half are people you've met in passing at parties, or possibly invented on the spot. You describe your roommate as artistic and the building as vibrant, which is technically true if you count the graffiti in the stairwell and the band practicing on the roof at 2 a.m. She asks if you're taking care of yourself. Of course, you say, as you flick an ash off your cigarette and scan the room for something vaguely nutritious. The closest you've come to a vegetable this week is the slice of tomato on your cheeseburger and the wilting lettuce at the bottom of your fridge. She asks about your health, and you assure her that you're getting plenty of rest, though you neglect to mention the kind of rest that's induced by pharmaceutical intervention. You try not to let the conversation drift into dangerous territory, your finances, your love life, the ever-present background noise of sirens and shouting. She wants you to come home for a visit. You promise you will soon, which in your mind means sometime after the city invents a teleporter or you find a clean pair of socks. She asks if you need anything, and you laugh it off. I'm fine, really. Just busy. You both know it's a lie, but it's the kind of lie that keeps the world turning. Every so often, she'll catch you off guard with a quiet, serious question. Are you happy? That's the hardest one. You pause, stare out the window at the city lights, and try to remember what happiness is supposed to look like. You mumble something about new experiences, about the energy of the city, about finding yourself. She listens, not entirely convinced, but too kind to press further. Before you hang up, she reminds you to take care of yourself. Eat a real meal. get some sleep, and call more often, okay? You promise you will, even though you both know that the next call will come when you're feeling particularly lost, lonely, or in need of a reminder that someone out there still cares whether or not you've eaten a vegetable. After the call, you sit in the quiet, the hum of the city filtering through the window. The conversation leaves you feeling exposed, like you've peeled back a layer of armor you didn't realize you were wearing. For a moment, you consider taking your mom's advice, cooking a real meal, going to bed before sunrise, maybe even writing her a real letter. But instead, you put the phone back on the receiver, sigh, and head out for another night, comforted and haunted in equal measure by the fact that no matter what you tell her, your mom always knows the truth. Because in the end, no matter how far you run, how many excuses you invent, or how many pills you pop, you can't out-disco the wisdom of a mother's intuition. In 1970s New York, family ties might stretch, but they never really break. And sometimes that's the only thing holding you together. Employment is a revolving door. You lose jobs as quickly as you find them. Sometimes you just invent one. Today you're a freelance consultant. Tomorrow, maybe a nightclub vibe manager. It's all about confidence, and paperwork is optional. In 1970s New York, the job market is as wild and unpredictable as the nightlife. Forget LinkedIn profiles and 5-year plans. Your resume is more like a bingo card, filled with half-remembered gigs, mysterious gaps, and 1 or 2 positions that probably aren't legal in most states. You bounce between opportunities, hustles, and full-on improvisation, navigating a world where the only constant is change, and the only thing reliable is your landlord's insistence on rent. The morning might start with a plan, an interview at a record store, an application for a job as a barista, maybe a tryout as a backup dancer for a band that doesn't technically exist yet. You show up, charm your way through the door, and do your best to convince the manager that you know how to operate a cash register, make coffee, or at the very least, show up mostly on time. Sometimes it works. Sometimes you're back on the street by noon, searching for a new opportunity and a sandwich that won't break the bank. Being fired isn't a tragedy. It's practically a rite of passage. Everyone you know has a story about being let go, laid off, or simply ghosted by an employer who vanished in the night, taking the petty cash and a potted fern. Maybe you slept through your shift. Maybe you played Donna Summer too loud on the store speakers. Or maybe you just failed the all-important don't argue with the customer's test. Whatever the reason, you shake it off, hit the streets, and start the hustle all over again. And then there are the invented jobs. In a city where half the population is between things, you get creative. You become a consultant, offering unsolicited advice to anyone who will listen, or a vibe manager, making sure the party stays fun, the music stays loud, and the snacks keep coming. You offer dog walking, cat sitting, plant watering, and occasionally tarot readings for people who just need someone to tell them things will work out. If someone asks for your credentials, you flash a winning smile and say, "Don't worry about it." Your friends are just as inventive. One is a street performance coordinator, which mostly means yelling at jugglers to stay in their lane. Another is a personal shopper for a woman who's never left her apartment. A third claims to be in real estate, though you're pretty sure he's just subletting couches for beer money. The entire city runs on optimism, chutzpah, and a willingness to fudge the details on a W-2 form. Payday is a fleeting concept. Sometimes you're paid in cash, sometimes in drink tickets or concert passes, sometimes in the kind of IOUs that never materialize. Your bank account is a roller coaster, swinging from flush to famine with the regularity of the sea train. When you're short on cash, you tighten your belt, raid the couch cushions, or take on odd jobs, flyer distribution, moving furniture, cleaning apartments that look suspiciously like the ones you partied in last week. But for every setback, there's a new opportunity. Lose a job in the morning, land a gig by the afternoon. Someone always needs something. A temp worker, a courier, a dog walker, a fill-in bartender for an underground bar where the real currency is stories. And the biggest tip is being remembered at the door. Sometimes you get lucky and land a job that sticks for a week, a month, maybe even a season, long enough to memorize the coffee order, to be on a first-name basis with the boss, to almost believe in the illusion of stability. You learn to enjoy the ride. The constant churn of jobs lost and jobs found is exhausting, but it's also liberating. You're never stuck for long, and every new gig comes with fresh faces, new adventures, and a brand new reason to put on pants. In the 1970s, job security might be a myth, but adaptability is your superpower, and as long as you keep moving, you'll always find a way to make it work. Eventually, the bills catch up. You dig through the couch for loose change. Consider selling a lava lamp, and wonder if you can get paid for walking someone's iguana. Your wallet is mostly expired Subway tokens and the receipt for a grilled cheese. This is the other side of New York's glamour. The moment when the last paycheck evaporates and the city's relentless appetite for cash starts gnawing at your shoelaces. You stare at a stack of overdue notices. Rent, electricity, phone bill, the mysterious maintenance fee that appears every month with increasing urgency. The mailbox becomes a haunted house, each envelope a new ghost. You try to stretch what little you have left. First, it's rationing the good coffee. Then, it's switching from deli sandwiches to instant noodles. By the end of the week, dinner is whatever you can cobble together from the back shelf of the fridge, pickles, ketchup, one egg, and the kind of cheese that sweats when you look at it. You eyeball the last can of beans like it's a Fabergé egg. Getting creative is key. You hit up every friend who owes you money, however little. You scan the sidewalk for dropped coins, check payphones for forgotten quarters, and return old soda bottles for the 5-cent refund. The change jar by the door becomes your most trusted financial advisor, though its advice is mostly, don't even think about cabs this week. You consider all your assets. The lava lamp, a relic from your first apartment, might fetch a few bucks at a pawn shop, especially if you market it as vintage. Your record collection is off limits, but you briefly contemplate selling your extra beanbag chair. A neighbor suggests cat-sitting, dog walking, or iguana wrangling for a lady on the 3rd floor who insists her reptile needs daily affirmations. You jot it down. Desperation breeds invention. You scour classified ads for anything remotely lucrative. Errand running, grocery delivery, mystery shopper for a chain of diners that probably won't pay, but might at least feed you. If you're lucky, a friend from the club calls and asks if you want to make easy money, handing out flyers in Times Square dressed as a giant hot dog. It's humbling, but you're past caring about dignity. You're in survival mode. The social calendar tightens. No more cover charges, no more overpriced drinks at trendy bars. You pre-game at home, stretching a cheap bottle of wine over several nights. Parties become BYOB out of necessity, and you perfect the art of arriving late so you can scavenge whatever snacks and drinks remain. If someone brings a six-pack, they're a hero. If someone brings actual food, they're a legend. You cut corners everywhere. Electricity, Candles are romantic and, as a bonus, make everyone look better. Laundry? You hand wash the essential items in the bathtub and pray the hot water holds out. Haircuts become a group activity. One roommate trims the bangs, another does the back, and everyone just agrees not to comment on the results. You develop a sixth sense for free entertainment. Outdoor concerts, art gallery openings with complimentary cheese cubes, museum nights where nobody checks tickets too closely. Movie night is whatever's playing on the neighbor's TV, visible through a crack in the hallway door, if you squint. But even in these leanest moments, there's something oddly uplifting about the struggle. You commiserate with friends, pooling resources and swapping tips on which deli throws out bagels at closing time. A sense of camaraderie builds, fueled by mutual hardship and the stubborn belief that this too shall pass. And when you finally find a stray $5 bill in the pocket of last week's jeans, it feels like winning the lottery. You splurge on a slice of pizza, savor every bite, and make a silent vow. As soon as the next check comes in, you'll put something aside for emergencies. You won't, of course, but hope is cheap and dreams are free. In the end, running out of money in 1970s New York isn't just a crisis. It's a rite of passage, a crash course in resourcefulness, humility, and the art of making something out of almost nothing. The struggle is real, but so is your resilience. And besides, you can always sell the lava lamp. The party always ends. When you run out of Quaaludes, reality hits like a garbage truck. You sweat, you shake, you swear off everything forever until you find one more pill under the radiator. There's no polite way to crash after a night or a month spent floating on a pharmaceutical cloud. The world that seemed so soft and forgiving last night now feels like it's made of concrete and bad intentions. You wake up on a lumpy futon, tangled in sheets that might as well be a net, and suddenly you're cold, you're clammy, and every sound is an attack on your nervous system. Even the neighbor's goldfish seems to be judging you. It starts in your bones. They ache in a way that's both ancient and immediate, as if you've aged a decade in a single morning. Your head throbs, your muscles spasm, and your jaw aches from grinding your teeth through dreams that felt more like a fever than a fantasy. The sunlight through the window is a curse. You squint, cover your eyes, and try to remember what possessed you to think this was fun. Was it the music, the friends, or just the sweet, seductive promise that you could float forever and never have to come down? Withdrawal isn't dramatic in the way the movies show it. There's no orchestral soundtrack, no dramatic slow-motion montage. Instead, it's a parade of discomforts, sweat beading on your brow, hands trembling as you try to hold a coffee cup, the faint nausea that makes food seem impossible. You pace your apartment in slow, shuffling circles, debating whether to shower or just stick your head in the freezer for an hour. The phone rings and your heart leaps. Could it be someone with a refill? But it's just your landlord again, and you're suddenly exhausted by the thought of conversation. Time slows to a crawl. Every hour feels like a marathon. You bargain with yourself. If you can just make it until noon without falling apart, you'll reward yourself with a nap. You count the pills in your bottles, empty, check every pocket and drawer, and even peer under the fridge in hope of a miracle. Sometimes you find an ancient crumb or a desiccated jelly bean, but never what you really want. There's a mental side to it too. Every worry that got pushed down under a tide of sedatives now comes roaring back, sharp and insistent. Did you pay your rent? Did you say something embarrassing at the party? Did you call your mom? Or was that just another withdrawal-fueled hallucination? Guilt, shame, and anxiety all compete for top billing in your brain's relentless matinee. You scribble half-finished apologies to people you haven't seen in months, then toss them out, realizing no one expects you to make sense this week. You swear you'll quit, for real this time. You'll clean up your act, start drinking herbal tea, maybe take up jogging like that annoying neighbor who's always smiling at 7 a.m. You dig through the cupboards for chamomile, find only Tang and instant ramen, and decide that at least you'll stay hydrated. You listen to soothing music, attempt yoga, fail, and eventually just collapse on the floor, staring at the ceiling and waiting for the world to settle back into something resembling normal. But the city waits for no one. The traffic outside is a constant reminder that life is going on, with or without you. By late afternoon, your resolve begins to weaken. The symptoms haven't let up, but hope glimmers when you remember that, just maybe, there's one more pill stashed somewhere. A miracle in a dust bunny, forgotten during a previous binge. When you find it, there's a moment of hesitation, a fleeting pang of conscience. But withdrawal is a persuasive monster, and soon you're back to square one, promising yourself you'll quit tomorrow. That's the cycle. In 1970s New York, you learn to survive the come-down with humor, stubbornness, and the vague hope that next time you'll have a better plan. Until then, you sweat it out, shake it off, and keep your eyes peeled for the next tiny, chalky escape hatch hiding in the chaos. Relationships in the 70s are complicated. Maybe it's love. Maybe it's just mutual insurance against getting evicted. Either way, there's a lot of talking, crying, and promises made under the influence of pharmaceuticals and hopeless optimism. You never quite know how it starts. Sometimes it's a shared taxi after a disco party, a spark on the dance floor, or a chance encounter over the ashtray at an apartment after-party. Sometimes it's just proximity, two people living in the same building, going to the same dive bar, or showing up to the same Sunday hangover brunch, clutching coffee and sunglasses like armor. It doesn't really matter how. In a city as big and lonely as New York, you learn to hold on to whoever drifts close, at least for a little while. Love in this era is spontaneous and low on boundaries. You move in together after a week of dating, mostly because your combined record collection is better than your individual ones, and you both need help with rent. The courtship is less about candlelit dinners and more about splitting cab fare and sharing whatever prescription is in fashion this week. Your anniversary is the date you both remember to pay the Con Ed bill at the same time. Conversations are rarely straightforward. Emotions run high, but coherence runs low. Long talks stretch into the night, deep, rambling, profound, or just profoundly silly. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Becomes, should we get bagels or pizza? Affection is expressed in the language of small gestures, hiding the last clean towel for your partner, saving them the last cigarette, or agreeing to listen to their favorite album on repeat, even if it's the Bee Gees again. Fights are inevitable, but so are makeups. Sometimes it's the stress of the city, sometimes it's the chemical roller coaster, and sometimes it's just life in close quarters. You argue about dishes, money, who took the last Quaalude, or why the living room smells like a cross between a gym locker and a French bakery. Words are said, tears are shed, doors are slammed. Then, 2 hours later, you're sharing Chinese takeout and giggling over soap operas as if nothing ever happened. There's a blurry line between love and codependency, and everyone's stumbling along it, Relationships serve many purposes: companionship, comfort, a buffer against loneliness, and, in more than one case, a practical arrangement to avoid eviction. The concept of dating exclusively is fluid. Jealousy pops up now and then, but usually fizzles when someone remembers where they left the vodka. Promises are big, sweeping, and sometimes a little incoherent. We'll move to California. We'll start a band. We'll get a cat and name it Nixon. Physical affection is everywhere. Hand-holding on stoops, slow dancing in kitchens, a sleepy arm around the shoulders at a morning diner. But there's an undercurrent of uncertainty, too. You never know if your relationship is built on something solid or just the shared inertia of the party. You live day to day, content to stay close as long as the world keeps spinning and the bills keep coming. Some couples make it through, most don't, but nobody takes it too personally. Breakups are rarely dramatic, more like a slow fade. You move out, but you still see each other at the same parties, nodding across the room, sometimes sharing a cigarette and a laugh, each pretending not to notice the other's new date. But through all the ups, downs, and sideways detours, there's an odd sweetness in loving and being loved in the time of sedatives. You cling to each other for warmth, stability, and the hope that somewhere between the music and the mayhem, you'll find a little peace. If not, at least you'll have someone to split the rent and the last cup of instant coffee with when the city wakes up again. Because in 1970s New York, love might be messy, fleeting, or fueled by questionable life choices. But it's real, it's ridiculous, and sometimes it's just enough to get you through another night. Every now and then, you spot someone famous, maybe a rock star, maybe Andy Warhol, maybe a guy who insists he's Mick Jagger. Everyone is a legend in their own mind, and sometimes that's good enough. This is the 1970s in New York, where the line between celebrity and civilian is about as blurry as your vision after 3 vodka tonics and a Quaalude. You might be standing in line at the corner deli, half awake, and realize the person ahead of you is wearing sunglasses indoors and ordering a bagel with the conviction of a superstar. Is it a local actor, a downtown poet, or just a very determined street magician? You'll never know, and you don't really care. What matters is the story you'll tell later. The city is thick with real and would-be icons. Maybe you glimpse David Bowie slipping out of a cab on the Lower East Side, or catch Debbie Harry sipping coffee at an all-night diner. You once stood shoulder to shoulder with Patti Smith at the bar, or at least you're pretty sure it was her. Hard to say when the lights are low and you're still riding last night's buzz. Warhol sightings are especially coveted. He glides through parties like a ghost, trailed by a herd of admirers, each one desperate for a bit of his sparkle, or at least a Polaroid for the fridge. But for every bona fide celebrity, there are 10 more drugstore cowboys, those slick-haired, silver-tongued city creatures who dress the part and play the game, making grand entrances in bell-bottoms and velvet blazers. Some have talent, some have connections, and some are just blessed with the kind of confidence you can only get from believing your own press releases. They haunt the same bars, clubs, and after-parties, collecting stories, phone numbers, and the occasional bar tab someone else will inevitably pay. The best part is, nobody bothers to act cool. The city's not interested in shame or modesty. If you want to pretend you're a Rolling Stone, go ahead. Everyone's too busy living their own fantasy. One night, you chat up a woman who says she's Lou Reed's muse. The next, you share a cigarette on the fire escape with a man who claims he discovered disco and invented the bagel. Is any of it true? Absolutely not, but you play along. because that's half the fun. Sometimes the real legends blend right in. Maybe you'll sit next to a director who just won an Oscar, but he's more interested in arguing about baseball than talking movies. Or maybe the doorman at Studio 54 is secretly moonlighting as a session guitarist for the Stones. Fame here is fluid, an aura that rubs off on everyone, at least for a song or two. There are encounters you'll never forget, spotting a future star on a rainy Tuesday, bumping into a punk band in a greasy spoon at dawn, or watching someone who might be a fashion designer do the hustle in 6-inch heels at 3 a.m. Even the local characters, drag queens with Broadway dreams, chess hustlers in the park, the subway saxophonist who swears he played Carnegie Hall, all become part of the city's legendary tapestry. And when you're in the mood for a story, you don't need actual proof. I partied with Iggy Pop could mean anything from sharing a bathroom line at a dive bar to being within 5 feet of a guy with great cheekbones and a lot of eyeliner. In the city that never sleeps, facts are flexible, and reputation is built as much on rumor as reality. By morning, all the names and faces have blurred together. Maybe you really did see Mick Jagger, or maybe it was just another drugstore cowboy in snakeskin boots and a borrowed scarf. Either way, you walk home with a pocket full of stories and the certainty that, in New York, everyone's famous, even if it's just for one night. Your friends are getting into primal screaming, yoga, or some kind of pyramid scheme. You attend one session, fall asleep halfway through, and wake up feeling exactly the same, but with new incense. It's the late 1970s, and self-improvement is having a moment. Suddenly, your social circle is abuzz with talk of energy and chakras, and every other person you know has a business card with at least one crystal on it. There's a sense that everyone's searching for something, a shortcut to enlightenment, a pill for inner peace, or, at the very least, a socially acceptable reason for being late to work. Primal therapy is the hot new thing. You're skeptical, but your roommate swears it changed her life. "I found my real self," she announces, moments after throwing a pillow at the wall and screaming about her dad. You go along, more out of curiosity than conviction. The group gathers in a candlelit loft, the facilitator nodding gravely as everyone takes turns letting out their inner banshee. You muster a yelp, then a half-hearted ugh, before collapsing onto a beanbag chair and drifting off to the soft soundtrack of collective catharsis. You wake up when everyone's crying and hugging, grateful for the free herbal tea. If screaming isn't your thing, there's always yoga. You try a class in someone's living room, surrounded by potted plants, velvet curtains, and a woman named Rainbow. She gently guides you through stretches that feel more like medieval torture. Your downward dog is closer to a faceplant, and every time you try to focus on your breath, all you can smell is patchouli and regret. Still, you leave with a coupon for a free macrame plant holder and a vague sense of accomplishment. But the true heart of the New Age movement is its entrepreneurial spirit. Every week, someone is hosting a seminar in their apartment, promising financial freedom, spiritual awakening, or both. You're invited to a pyramid of abundance meeting. It turns out to be 3 hours of someone explaining how, if you just recruit 5 friends, you'll be rich in a month. The math doesn't add up, but you nod anyway and help yourself to another handful of carob chips. Incense becomes the default apartment fragrance, joined by essential oils that promise to boost your mood, attract romance, and banish negative energy. You now own at least 4 types of incense: sandalwood for clarity, jasmine for calm, and 2 others you can't pronounce. Your bookshelf fills with titles like The Tao of Now, How to Heal Your Inner Otter, and Astrology for Pets. At parties, conversations turn to birth charts and Mercury in retrograde. You nod along, pretending to understand, while quietly checking if anyone brought actual snacks. Some of your friends get deep into therapy, the old-fashioned kind. You hear stories of hour-long sessions spent recounting dreams, unpacking childhood traumas, and debating the hidden meaning of last Tuesday's sandwich. It's all very grown up, but also slightly exhausting. You try one session, end up telling the therapist your life story in the first 10 minutes, and spend the remaining 50 staring at a potted fern, wondering if you should ask for a prescription for existential dread. Despite all the effort, no one seems to have found the answer. Your friends are just as lost as you, only now with a bigger vocabulary for their anxieties. There's comfort in the rituals, though, the group meditations, the self-help workshops, the yoga classes that end with everyone lying flat on the floor in perfect peaceful confusion. Maybe you're not enlightened, but you're not alone. In the end, the quest for self-improvement is just another way to survive the city. A little hope, a little incense, and the knowledge that at least you tried. And if you don't feel any better, well, there's always next week's session, or another nap. Either way, you're working on yourself. One pyramid scheme, one downward dog, and one stick of incense at a time. As dawn creeps over the city, the parties wind down. You're left staring at a cracked ceiling, pondering your life choices, or at least the ones you remember. New York never really sleeps, but it sure does pass out. There's a strange hush that falls just after sunrise, an exhausted, collective sigh from millions of apartments. The disco lights have faded, the records have stopped spinning, and everyone who's anyone, and plenty of people who aren't, have collapsed in beds, on couches, or right on the living room rug. Outside, the city begins to buzz again. Garbage trucks growl, street vendors set up shop, and taxi drivers, who have somehow been awake all night, keep circling the block, hunting for their first fare. Inside your apartment, it's a different story. The party leftovers are everywhere. Half-eaten bagels, sticky cups, a sea of mismatched shoes by the door. Someone's jacket is draped over the lamp, and the cat is sleeping in the punch bowl, blissfully unaware that it's now the most hygienic spot in the whole place. You lie in bed, tangled in polyester sheets that smell faintly of incense, sweat, and good intentions gone stale. Sleep doesn't come easy. Your mind is a jumble of memories, anxieties, and dreams that keep chasing themselves in circles. Was that kiss last night real, or did you just imagine it? Did you actually tell your boss what you really thought about his innovative vision? Or was that just bravado mixed with vodka? You try to replay conversations in your head, but they dissolve into fragments. Laughter on a fire escape, a whispered secret in a bathroom line, someone singing along to Stayin' Alive in a voice that could only generously be called optimistic. That's the thing about the city, its relentless, unblinking energy. It keeps you running all day, then throws 1,000 distractions at you when you finally try to rest. You worry about the rent, about your friends, about the fact that you might be falling behind, or maybe you're ahead and just haven't realized it yet. You remember your mother's advice, get a good night's sleep, don't eat so late, and call more often, and promise yourself again that tomorrow you'll do better. Outside, you hear a couple arguing on the stoop, the familiar shriek of brakes, a dog barking at something only it can see. New York is awake, even if its people are not. You close your eyes and drift in and out, haunted by dreams that blend with reality. Endless staircases, subway rides to nowhere, crowds that turn into waves, and a distant, persistent drumbeat that might just be your own heart. Sometimes there are real night terrors, a flash of fear, a pounding heart, the sudden certainty that you left the oven on or said the wrong thing to the wrong person. You remind yourself that everyone in this city is running from something, and the only way to keep up is to keep moving, keep hustling, keep dreaming. You clutch your pillow and let the panic subside, soothed by the slow, rhythmic hum of the radiator and the knowledge that the sun will rise again, whether you're ready for it or not. Yet in these quiet, restless hours, dreams bloom in the city's cracked and crowded soil. Maybe you'll write that novel, land that job, fall in love for real this time. Maybe tomorrow will be different, or maybe it'll just be another chapter in the same wild, improbable story. Either way, you wouldn't trade it. Not the sleepless nights, not the regrets, not the dreams that leave you gasping and grinning in the dark. Because New York in the 70s isn't just a place you live, it's a place you survive, night after night, on the thin electric edge between terror and possibility. And when the city finally lets you rest, just for a moment, you dream bigger than ever, because here, anything, absolutely anything, feels possible when the sun comes up. And finally, another morning. You made it. You're not sure how, but you did. The city is loud, your head hurts, and you're already making plans for tonight. Because if there's one thing the 70s taught you, it's that survival is less about thriving and more about showing up. Slightly wobbly, always interesting, and never, ever boring. The sun cuts through your window blinds like a hot knife, through whatever dignity you have left. You peel yourself off a futon or a couch, or, if last night was particularly wild, the shag carpet beneath the coffee table, and take stock. There's an empty glass on the floor, a sock on the lamp, and a vague but persistent taste of old cigarettes and disappointment in your mouth. You rub your temples, stretch your legs, and listen for the city. The clatter of garbage trucks, the siren's wail, the upstairs neighbors' endless tap dancing. It's the New York alarm clock, and there's no snooze button. You pad into the kitchen, step over last night's abandoned party, plate, and hope against hope that there's something edible left in the fridge. There's not. Just a bottle of orange soda, half a lemon, and the stubborn remains of Chinese takeout that should probably be considered an archaeological artifact. So you settle for coffee, always coffee, burnt, bitter, and life-giving. The caffeine chases away the last shadows of sleep, but it can't quite touch the persistent ache behind your eyes, or the existential dread that's standard issue for anyone still standing after a decade like this. Your reflection in the bathroom mirror is a cautionary tale, but also, weirdly, a badge of honor. The circles under your eyes have stories to tell. There's glitter in your hair, or maybe it's just dust from the ceiling vent. You splash water on your face, brush your teeth, and try not to think about what you said or did the night before. You survived it, and that's enough. Outside, the world is already running laps. People in suits dart between cabs. Kids hopscotch across cracked sidewalks. Vendors set up their carts, hawking everything from bagels to questionable hot dogs. Life in the city doesn't pause for hangovers or regrets. You throw on the cleanest clothes you can find, by which you mean the ones that don't smell like last night's party. Stuff your feet into battered shoes and head out the door. Today is for catching up and catching your breath. You check your pockets for cash, nothing. You check your phone messages, one from your mom, one from your boss, and several from people whose names you recognize only vaguely, asking if you're still on for tonight. You are, of course. Plans, in the 70s, are less about commitment and more about the general direction you'll be heading once the sun goes down. There are errands to run, jobs to half-heartedly apply for, and groceries to avoid buying until the very last moment. You promise yourself you'll do better, eat a salad, call your family, actually read a book instead of using it as a coaster. Maybe today, you think, will be different. But as the day rolls on and your head clears, the itch for excitement returns. There's always another party, another story, another excuse to pretend you're just living in the moment. You swap stories with friends, patch together plans, and laugh about the worst parts of the night before, because somehow, even the disasters become hilarious with just a little daylight and a lot of coffee. Nobody here is winning any prizes for responsible adulthood, but everyone's a contender for most likely to survive an apocalypse with a smile. And so you rally. Because surviving the day after isn't just about endurance, it's about resilience, resourcefulness, and the stubborn belief that something amazing might be waiting just around the next corner, or in the next dimly lit club, or on the next wild, unpredictable night. In 1970s New York, the party might end, but the story never does. You survived, somehow, and tonight, you'll do it all again. There's no Peloton, no hot yoga, and definitely no boutique gym membership. Your daily exercise consists of sprinting down graffiti-splattered sidewalks to avoid muggers, angry taxi drivers, and that one guy from your last job who swears you still have his lava lamp. You're pretty sure you've hit 10,000 steps before noon, mostly while being chased by dogs, creditors, or existential dread. In the fitness culture of 1970s, New York, cardio means keeping pace with the rest of the city or getting left behind. Forget running shoes, your sneakers are canvas, full of holes, and held together by hope. Your best pair of gym shorts is probably just a pair of cut-off jeans, and nobody's heard of moisture-wicking fabric. If you're sweating, you're living right. Your workout starts the moment you leave your apartment. You sprint down 6 flights of stairs because the elevator is either broken or being used as a makeshift storage unit for someone's collection of disco records. You dodge the neighbor's dog in the hallway, sidestep a pile of questionable trash on the stoop, and leap into the chaos of the morning rush. Traffic lights are more of a suggestion than a rule. You jog in place on street corners, eyeing drivers who look ready to challenge pedestrians to a game of real-life Frogger. Crossing the street is a full-contact sport. Taxi drivers lay on their horns, convinced they have the right of way no matter what the light says. You're light on your feet, mostly because you're running late. Again. You weave between bike messengers, strollers, and street vendors, hawking pretzels and questionable hot dogs. The sidewalks themselves are an obstacle course. Potholes, puddles, and the ever-present tangle of leashed dogs who seem to take personal joy in tripping up passers-by. If you thought your day would slow down at work, think again. You're either sprinting to catch a train that's somehow always arriving in 3 minutes, or hoofing it up and down endless flights of subway stairs because the escalator is out of order and probably being used as a stage by an impromptu breakdancing crew. You duck into subway cars just before the doors close, squeeze through crowds, and wedge yourself into impossible spaces with the flexibility of a circus contortionist. Lunch hour means more walking, across blocks and avenues in search of the one bodega with edible sandwiches, the friend who owes you money, or the public restroom that isn't a biohazard. You speed walk to keep up with friends, or just to get away from the guy on the corner who claims he's got tickets to a private Rolling Stones rehearsal in the Bronx. Afternoons are spent dodging your boss, running errands, and occasionally actually running. Sometimes you're running from the landlord's nephew who wants rent. Sometimes you're running to catch the ice cream truck before it disappears down the block. Sometimes you're running just to feel alive, convinced that the city is chasing you, and sometimes it really is. Evenings aren't any more restful. If you're heading to a club, you're running to make the guest list before it closes. If you're headed home, you're jogging to avoid the late-night crowd that gets rowdier with each passing hour. By the time you finally climb back up your building steps, you're sore, breathless, and somehow still not in shape. Yet, despite all the chaos, you can't help but feel a certain pride. You might not have a six-pack, but you've got calves of steel from climbing subway stairs and thighs honed by years of sprinting for your life. Your reflexes are sharp, your heart is strong, and you know that, in this city, fitness isn't about gyms or trainers. It's about surviving. One frantic dash, one wild chase, and one near miss at a time. Congratulations, you're an accidental athlete. In 1970s New York, that's all the training you'll ever need. Every morning is a struggle against your own closet. Should you wear the paisley shirt, the bell bottoms, or both, knowing one static shock could set you on fire? You're all about expressing yourself. If yourself is 40% nylon, 3% confusion, and 10% humidity. Shoes are platforms. Pants are flammable. Somewhere in America, a safety inspector is weeping. Welcome to the fashion battleground of 1970s New York, where the motto is more and subtlety is illegal. You swing open the closet door and are instantly confronted with a psychedelic riot of color and texture. Every hanger threatens to leap off the rod in protest. Fabrics you can't pronounce, polyester, acrylic, double knit, Chiana, compete for dominance. The only thing they have in common is their shared ability to trap heat and make you sweat through a snowstorm. First, the pants. Bell bottoms wide enough to double as car covers. Each pair is a gamble. Will they make your legs look endless or just endlessly confused? You can pick from burnt orange, avocado green, or electric grape, which is a color not found in nature, but somehow always found in thrift shops. Every pair feels slightly damp, even when they're fresh from the clean pile. Then, the shirts. Do you want paisley, floral, geometric, or all three at once? You grab a collar so wide it could double as an umbrella, snap the top button, and immediately wonder if you've just given yourself whiplash. If you're feeling bold, you go for the mesh tank top, a garment designed exclusively for people who don't mind feeling a cool breeze and the judgment of every grandparent in the neighborhood. Outerwear is no less hazardous. You consider the suede fringe jacket, a dust magnet and rain sponge, the fake fur vest, shedding everywhere, or the ever-reliable denim jacket, adorned with enough patches to count as a minor form of self-expression or protest. Scarves are huge, literally, and get caught in subway, doors, revolving doors, and, on one occasion, a passing roller skater. Accessories are the final risk assessment. Platform shoes promise height, but threaten ankles. You teeter through the day, pretending not to notice the blisters and telling yourself you look taller, even if you can't feel your toes. Jewelry is chunky, loud, and magnetic enough to disrupt radio signals. You leave the house looking like a disco ball escaped from Studio 54. Humidity is your true enemy. Hair, painstakingly feathered or permed, grows in size and attitude the moment you step outside. Hairspray is both shield and weapon, but no match for New York's summer heat. You end up looking like you stuck your finger in a light socket, staticky, wide-eyed, and slightly dangerous. Some days, fashion triumphs. You strut down the street, catching admiring glances from strangers and approving nods from the older woman on the corner who claims she used to party with Cher. Other days, you spend the morning wrestling with zippers, losing a platform heel to a sidewalk crack, and discovering mid-afternoon that your pants are, in fact, see-through in direct sunlight. You add this to your growing list of things to never mention to your mother. Fads change faster than you can keep up. One week, it's caftans and tie-dye. The next, it's satin shirts and vests you must wear with nothing underneath. You attend a party dressed like a backup dancer for ABBA, only to find everyone else is channeling rural farmer meets urban cowboy. You laugh it off. Everyone's style is a little unhinged, and that's half the fun. But for all the regrets, melted shoe soles, pant hems ruined by rain, blouses that shrink 2 sizes with every wash, there's a fierce pride in having survived the era with your sense of self, and at least half your wardrobe, intact. In 1970s New York, fashion attacks daily, but you face it with a wink, a platform stomp, and enough static electricity to power the entire block. You can't cross the block without bumping into a human highlight reel. The doorman at your building moonlights as a magician. The lady downstairs is convinced her cat is reincarnated from Napoleon. Every bodega owner knows your secrets. And the disco queen in apartment 5C claims she danced with Bowie, but honestly, it could have been a cardboard cutout. Life in a 1970s New York neighborhood is less quiet residential street and more off-Broadway variety show. Step out your front door and you're already in Act 1. The city's famed anonymity is a myth. Everyone here knows everyone else's business, and most of them want to tell you about it, usually before your second cup of coffee. Start with your doorman, Lenny, a legend in his own mind and yours. By day, he greets residents with a wave and a conspiratorial wink, spinning stories about celebrity guests and near-miss robberies. By night, he's known to pull a coin from your ear, disappear your keys, or offer relationship advice that's as bewildering as it is heartfelt. Lenny's seen everything: midnight breakups, 5 a.m. reunions, and enough questionable furniture deliveries to fill a warehouse. He once swears he saw Mick Jagger sneak in through the basement, but it was actually just the building's plumber. Still, the story lives on. Then there's Mrs. Rossetti downstairs, self-appointed queen of the courtyard. She waters her plastic plants, yells at pigeons, and holds court on a folding chair, wrapped in a fur coat regardless of season. She's convinced her tabby, General Bonaparte, is the reincarnation of the French emperor, and she'll tell you so at length if you pause in the stairwell for even a second. He has strategy in his eyes, she insists, as the cat glares at everyone, and occasionally attempts a coup on the neighbor's parakeet. The local bodega is your true community center. You stop in for coffee, or aspirin, or a midnight egg sandwich, and the owner, Tony, greets you by name. He knows who's behind on rent, who's in love, and who left the club with whom. He slips you a free coffee when you look particularly desperate, and a stern warning about those kids with the roller skates. On Sundays, you hear rumors about everyone else in line, who's cheating, who's moving, who might be about to make it big. But the real star is the disco queen of apartment 5C. Every night, you hear her practicing dance moves in high heels and humming along to Donna Summer. She claims to have been an extra in Saturday Night Fever and to have shared a cigarette with David Bowie backstage at CBGB. Her apartment smells like hairspray, incense, and the vague aroma of something always cooking. You're invited in for cocktails about once a month, and you never leave without a new story, possibly true, definitely entertaining. There's the couple upstairs who hosts underground poker games and lets you join as long as you bring chips, the snack kind, not the gambling kind. The aspiring playwright in 2B leaves flyers for his shows under every door, and if you attend, you'll be rewarded with at least one monologue about city life and a free can of Tab. The elevator's most consistent passenger is Mrs. Kelly's poodle, Mitzi, who wears more outfits in a week than you do in a season. Every street has a self-proclaimed mayor, a poet, a conspiracy theorist, and at least one person who hasn't paid for a newspaper in a decade, but can recite the headlines anyway. There's the guy who busks outside the laundromat, strumming a guitar and making up songs about whoever passes. And don't forget the landlord's nephew, who's always fixing things but has never actually fixed a thing. In this city, you survive on personality as much as hustle. You trade favors, stories, and borrowed sugar. The oddballs, the eccentrics, the true originals, they turn a gray block into a Technicolor community. After all, you may forget the year, but you'll never forget the people. In 1970s New York, the characters are more memorable than the skyline, and the stories they tell, whether true or just truth adjacent, are the glue that holds your crazy, chaotic neighborhood together. So, as the city's lights flicker outside your window and the echoes of disco fade into the soft hum of late-night traffic, let's take a gentle, grateful breath together. You've survived another day, another wild, stupefying, and utterly unforgettable night in 1970s New York, where even the pigeons have more stories than most people. Tonight, you stumbled through rooms fragrant with incense and questionable choices. You rode the subway shoulder to shoulder with hustlers and dreamers, navigated friendships forged over pill bottles and payphones, and endured a hangover that could only be described as existential. You hustled, improvised, and laughed your way through a city that didn't care if you triumphed or failed, as long as you showed up with style, or at least with pants. But you also made it through the hard parts, the moments of uncertainty, the crash after the high, the quiet, weirdly beautiful resilience it takes to get up, pour yourself a burnt cup of coffee, and do it all again. If you ever wonder how people survive those days, remember, they didn't always. Not everyone made it. But those who did, who danced through the madness, who held on to their friends, who managed to find just enough hope in the chaos, they paved the way for the quieter, comfier nights we have now. So tonight, as you nestle into your clean sheets, with central air humming, and no risk of tripping over someone else's platform shoes, maybe send a silent thank you to the survivors of the past. They endured the noise, the neon, and the nonsense so you could fall asleep to the gentle glow of your phone rather than a flickering lava lamp. Because history, no matter how brutal or absurd, shows us that people are stubborn, hopeful, and always just a little bit ridiculous. And somehow, that's what gets us through. Sleep well, friend. The city's still buzzing, but you're safe, you're warm, and you've earned your rest. Good night.